behind James and just over 3,000 points ahead of Clippers guard James Harden. The Suns came up short, losing 119-112 against the Grizzlies. The Raptors and newly acquired wing Brandon Ingram have agreed to a 3-year, $120 million contract extension that includes a player option in the 27-28 season. The Saints have hired Eagles offensive coordinator Moore as their new head coach. Former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley is the leading candidate to become the Saints defensive coordinator. Moore was Staley's offensive coordinator with the Chargers. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive.
That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
With Target, checking off your Valentine's Day list has never been easier. First, surprise your favorite people with something extra thoughtful, like a soothing candle in a memorable scent, or a decorative picture frame to show off every moment. Both buy one, get one 50% off with Target Circle. And don't forget to treat yourself. Find the sweetest style for your special occasion with 20% off women's dresses now through Friday. This week, find Valentine's gifts for everyone you love, only at Target.
This sandwich is not just spicy, it's flavorful.
Hi, this is Matayo. And this is Elsa. And a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A Grilled Spicy Deluxe Sandwich is that spicy kick. Because the spice comes in at just the right moment.
Oh, no. A little thing I love is that cilantro lime sauce. It's a fun blend of zesty and bold. That's what really makes me happy. Are you going to eat all your fries?
Order a Chick-fil-A Grilled Spicy Deluxe Sandwich and a Diet Dr. Pepper on the Chick-fil-A app for a limited time. Real guests paid for their testimonials.
How many SportsGrid listeners does it take to change a light bulb?
It takes two.
One to change the light bulb, and one to see if our mobile app can provide the same amount of light. Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
We are live right here on a Wednesday on Football Full Circle. It is FFC all across the SportsGrid Radio Network and Sirius XM Channel 159. He is Scott Wetzel. I am Ben Stevens. Together here for the next hour up until 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And yes, it is fully the football offseason, but now around the National Football League, Scott, as we got the news officially yesterday, the head coaching carousel in 2025 has officially stopped spinning. All 7 head coaching vacancies around the National Football League this offseason have been filled, and with all of them officially having a new head coach in place, we'll look at the offseason outlook for all 7 of these NFL teams, who made the best hire, who made the worst one, and the biggest changes that they need to make right away in these new jobs. We'll talk some NFL news and notes. Travis Kelce speaking on his podcast with his brother Jason about Super Bowl 59 and his future in the NFL. Scott, it's the offseason, but it never slows down on Football Full Circle.
Yeah, it's 24/7 with us, right? There's always, in the NFL, man, there's always a story. There always is. It's not quite like with the NBA, where I think the NBA trading is more important to fans than the actual games themselves. I wouldn't say that with the NFL, but all the free agency, the draft, we're going to get into that, no doubt, with over the next couple of weeks. The new head coaches, who's under the most pressure, who's got to win, who's walking into a dead man's walking situation. So it should be a lot of fun. And we know all the stats, right? It happened again this year. The team that goes from last place to first place happens every single year. So who's going to be that team for 2025? And it always sells hope. And that's really what it does. The worst team, could be the best team in the division anyway next season.
Absolutely so, Scott. We never expected the Commanders to be in the NFC Championship game with a first-year head coach in Landover and a rookie quarterback. And look what we saw, a promising future outside of the nation's capital. But, Scott, as we came on the air yesterday on Football Full Circle, we got the renewed report from ESPN's Adam Schefter. What we had all expected, officially confirmed yesterday and officially announced by the New Orleans Saints. Kellen Moore has been named the new head coach in the Big Easy. This past season, his only one in Philadelphia as the offensive coordinator, guiding that Eagles attack to a Super Bowl championship and Lombardi trophy that he won just a few days ago on a Sunday evening inside the Superdome. That's his new home. That's his new job, to get the Saints to that kind of stage during his head coaching tenure. Scott, we discussed Kellen Moore 36 years old, what he means for New Orleans, and some of those questions yesterday. Now we put it into context in the situation he will step into, how it compares to the 6 other head coaching vacancies and those new head coaching hires we have seen at a stage this offseason. As the carousel is now done spinning, just to remind everybody, here's what we have. The Chicago Bears hired Ben Johnson. The Dallas Cowboys hired Brian Schottenheimer. The Jaguars hired Liam Cohen. The Jets go with former player Aaron Glenn. Same with the Patriots and a former player and coach in Foxborough, naming Mike Vrabel the new head coach. The Raiders turn to the wily veteran, the 73-year-old Pete Carroll, after a year out of the NFL. And the Saints, of course, the 7th and final team to have that head coaching hire. And they tab Kellen Moore, their new head coach, his first head coaching gig in the National Football League. Scott, as I laid out those 7 vacancies that have now been filled this offseason, what do you think was the best decision made by any of those NFL organizations?
You know, I'm believe it or not, I'm going to go Liam Cohen with Jacksonville. If he could do what he did in Tampa Bay, and you got to give him a certain amount of credit, right? I mean, listen, he not like he was dealing with chump change. You know, Baker Mayfield, halfway decent quarterback, but you know, he kind of progressed that a little bit more this past off season. You know, if he could do wonders with Trevor Lawrence, you know, Lawrence is on that. He's in the fork in the road, right? Is he going to be a really, really good quarterback, or is he going to be just an average quarterback that got a God load a ton of money, right? So if Cohen can be that quarterback guru, you know, kind of like with Carolina last year, then I think him and Jacksonville may be in the best position. They're in a division that's a winnable division. It's not a hard division. They certainly have some talent on that football team. I think that's the one that's set up to have the most success.
You know, Scott, I kind of agree with you. I think my best head coaching hire in this cycle was Ben Johnson in Chicago because of everything he has done during his time as an offensive coordinator in Detroit, a talented Bears organization and roster as well that entered this previous season with an 8.5 win total. If he can elevate Caleb Williams year over year and make those strides into his sophomore season in the National Football League, I do believe Ben Johnson is the right guy finally to guide Chicago to consistent success. But one of the reasons, Scott, I actually think you could argue that Liam Cohen's gig in Jacksonville is the most attractive or desirable or best landing spot of this cycle is not just the quarterback in place in Trevor Lawrence, who signed a very large contract extension this past offseason, but also when you put into context the Jags, the division they play in, and what relative expectation is going to be. Scott, if the Bears are a winning football team, even with Ben Johnson in his first year as a head coach, there's no guarantee they're a playoff team in the NFC. Heck, there's no guarantee they finish in the top half of a wildly competitive division in the NFC North, making that incredibly difficult. If the Jags finish with a winning record, we would assume they can make some strides within an AFC South that is not necessarily the strongest division around the National Football League. So, Scott, I would tend to agree, although I think the best head coaching hire was Ben Johnson. Potentially the best scenario is what Liam Cohen finds in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I mean, and not only that, and listen, there's pressure to win no matter where you are, but the pressure to win in Jacksonville, I don't think compares, right, to the pressure to win in Chicago. And you said at least you're going into a division where, all right, you do have the Houston Texans, but, you know, every division's got to have at least one team. Otherwise, you know, you should be as competitive as the next two with Indianapolis and Tennessee, right? Whereas Chicago, man, you talk about a crazy Detroit, you know, in Green Bay and Minnesota, you got to figure the Vikings maybe come back a little bit, but you know they're still going to be really, really good. You could have success in Chicago, but record-wise, not show it. Whereas you could be not as great as you expected in Jacksonville, but record-wise, you will show it.
And Scott, both of these teams entered 2024 with an 8.5 win total, both having some juice on the over for different reasons in the Windy City as compared to Jacksonville. But the Jags, who won the AFC South in 2022, were 8-3 through 12 weeks in 2023 before injuries to Trevor Lawrence complicated their home stretch. They faltered. The Texans rose to the occasion. And, of course, Jacksonville, a disastrous season in 2024. But, Scott, there is some more hope, I would say, for the Jags to figure things out right away. And when you are in Jacksonville, it's an interesting situation. 4-13 season in 2024, a 75-1 price got in those Super Bowl 60 odds, about middle of the pack, if not bottom half of the National Football League. With the 5th overall pick this upcoming April in the 2025 NFL Draft, they have 10 total picks, the most of any of these 7 head coaching vacancies that we had seen around the NFL, and a little bit more than $32 million in cap space. It was a chaotic coaching hire, that 48-hour window where Liam Cohen rebuked the job opening in Jacksonville. Shad Khan said, all right, I'll actually fire Trent Baalke. So once I did that, he reaches back out to Liam Cohen, who takes the job interview in secret, burns a ton of bridges with the Buccaneers, but does get the head coaching job in Duval County. And there was, of course, Liam Cohen at the introductory press conference going, Duval, that was weird and everybody made fun of. But ultimately, Scott, I do think the situation, the setting, and who Liam Cohen is ripe for success in Jacksonville.
Yeah, and I think he would get a little bit of a pass first year if he goes 8-7, 7-8, 7-10. Whereas in Chicago, I mean, he's expected to win right away, and that might be a little bit more than what he can handle in Chicago.
We'll talk about the Bears, their outlook, and everybody else that has made a head coaching decision this offseason. But a little bit more on Jacksonville. We'll do that up next, live right here on Football Full Circle.
4 out of 5 scientists agree it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. And we're pretty sure that one scientist is still a virgin. He just gives that vibe. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
15 measles cases, mostly in school-aged children, have been confirmed in a small county in West Texas with one of the highest rates of vaccine exemptions in the state.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg.
South Plains Public Health District Director Zach Holbrook said Monday that his department was first notified in late January about the first 2 cases in Gaines County, which he said were 2 children who had seen a physician in Lubbock. Some of the cases appear to be connected to private religious schools in the district. Holbrook says an investigation is ongoing. New York government employees are barred from downloading DeepSeek's artificial intelligence application onto state devices due to security concerns. Governor Kathy Hochul made the announcement Monday. The DeepSeek chatbot known as R1 responds to user queries just like its U.S.-based counterparts, such as the popular ChatGPT. But the China-based DeepSeek has code hidden in its programming that has the built-in capability to send user data directly to the Chinese government, according to experts.
I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Now's the time to shop limited-time doorbuster deals during Pro Savings Days at Lowe's. Save $50 on a Little Giant King Combo 6-foot ladder. Was $199, now $149. Plus, save $100 on a DeWalt XR 20-volt Power Stack 5-amp-hour battery. Was $199, now $99. Get these can't-miss deals now before they're gone. Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Doorbusters valid 1/13 through 1/15. Selection varies by location while supplies last.
Progressive presents Renter's MVP's Most Valuable Possessions. Today's MVP, Tom Kelly's carbon fiber mountain bike. Because more than riding his carbon fiber mountain bike, Tom loves telling people about his carbon fiber mountain bike. Friends, family, even a local barista knows about his carbon fiber mountain bike. And that's why Tom's carbon fiber mountain bike, if you haven't heard about it, is today's MVP. Keep your most valuable possessions protected by bundling your renters and auto insurance with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
There's something you should know and always remember. SportsGrid does not increase luck. We're your unfair advantage for the latest sports gaming information. If you're looking for luck, go find a horseshoe. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. Scott, we are talking about the 7 head coaching hires that have been made already this offseason, filling every vacancy. That carousel has now officially come to a close, at least head coaching carousel. Still have to figure out some of the staffs that will work under these new head guys. But in Jacksonville, Scott, of course, when you think about the important positions within your franchise, front office, incredibly important, ownership, always there, and is always that looming presence. But head coach and the partnership with the quarterback is incredibly, incredibly critical. And you would think the bright offensive mind that is Liam Cohen at 39 years old, partnering with the young and promising Trevor Lawrence, who has had some high highs, some low lows, and some inconsistency and now injuries along the way in his 4 years, Scott, in the NFL. It should be one to be hopeful about in Duval County. Trevor Lawrence has had an interesting NFL career. The prince who was promised. People started tanking for Trevor Lawrence when he was a freshman at Clemson and was drafted first overall in 2021. An uneasy rookie season. Once you got rid of Urban Meyer, the thought was that Trevor Lawrence would be the guy in Jacksonville. Great first year with Doug Peterson. They win the AFC South. They have that dramatic and historic comeback in the opening round of the postseason against the LA Chargers. They were the favorites to win the AFC South. As we mentioned, off to a great start in 2023 before injuries really curtailed that season for Trevor Lawrence and a good majority of 2024 as well. Scott, there is the promise of Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, paid as such this previous offseason entering the 2024 campaign. You would think if there is a coach in this cycle outside of Ben Johnson that can unlock the ability of Trevor Lawrence, it would be a guy like Liam Cohen.
Yeah. Listen, I'm on the fence with Trevor. I was never one of those guys. You said it, Ben. I mean, there was talk about, oh, he's the greatest prospect I ever seen from well-respected, personnel people. It's like, man, he's not that good. Take it easy, right? But, you saw his talent, obviously. So I'm on the fence with him. He's good enough where you should be able to win, in the NFL. He's not a bad quarterback by any stretch. Can he take him to that elite level like we thought maybe we were going to get a couple of years ago when they went to the second round and really took Kansas City to the limit in the second round of the playoffs after having that big comeback against the Chargers? So, but I think he's going to have some success there. I do lean more towards Trevor being good than Trevor being a mediocre quarterback. And the situation is right now. This is his third head coach. You want to say it's not his fault? Okay, with Urban Meyer, and they bring in Doug Peterson, good pedigree, goes to the Super Bowl with the Eagles, and that doesn't work out for whatever reason. So this is his third guy. Now he just got a new contract, so I'm not going to tell you that if it doesn't work out with Cohen, he's not going to be around anymore. He's going to be there for the next. Two head coaches if Cohen doesn't work out, at least, right? So, but I think they're set up for success. That you need to add some pieces. They go get themselves a big time wide receiver. They got the running back. So I think they're in. The defense is actually halfway decent. I think they're really going to challenge in that division next year.
You got Brian Thomas Jr., the first round pick out of LSU, who had a great rookie campaign as well. Over 1,000 yards this year receiving for Jacksonville. A lot to like in this situation, regardless of how chaotic it was to eventually land on Liam Cohen as the head coach. And Scott, you brought up Trevor Lawrence's contract. I think it is a very fair point that he might outlast Cohen, even if Cohen is not the guy to get Trevor Lawrence to play at his best. 5-year, $275 million extension last offseason. That at the time matched Joe Burrow at $55 million per year on average, for the richest contract in NFL history. There is an investment in Trevor Lawrence from Jacksonville. You don't need Scott, myself, or anybody else to tell you just exactly how the Jags feel about Trevor Lawrence. That is the reality of the situation. Scott, it's interesting in having these conversations about the offseason outlook for all of these 7 NFL teams that made a head coaching hire this offseason in terms of what we can expect for 2025 and beyond. But a lot of that can be put to a win total number. Super Bowl numbers out there now. Conference and division numbers probably coming out in the next week or so. What do you think the win total will be for the Jacksonville Jaguars this year in the first year under Liam Cohen?
And as far as how much they're actually going to win versus what Vegas is saying, next to last place schedule, right? That should help a little bit. Tennessee's going to have the last place schedule in that division. I could see them going over the win total. If the win total is 8.5, as you suggested before, I would go 9. I even think maybe 10. I don't think 10-7. AFC's got the extra home game this year. So, although they got 2 games, over in Europe, as they always do every single season, but they've had success over there. So that's not been a detriment, believe it or not. But if you told me 10-7, I'd be more surprised 7-10 than I would 10-7. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think the win total will probably be 7.5, either with pretty heavy juice on the over or around an 8.5 number, which I would not be surprised to see it open up as from the odds maker's perspective. And Scott, I do, like you, believe that Jacksonville will flirt with a winning record. If come December, Jacksonville is above 500, they're going to be in the hunt for not just a wild card spot, but potentially the divisional crown within the AFC South. Now, I do believe the Texans will enter this upcoming season as the favorites. They've won the division 2 years in a row. Will it be a hefty minus money price? Is it going to be closer to even money, plus 110, plus 125? Perhaps. I do believe Jacksonville can make some noise, and that will be kind of a part of the expectation in the first year for Liam Cohn and Trevor Lawrence together in 2025. Scott, we talked about the Bears as another successful head coaching hire with Ben Johnson. He's going to have to win right away. Do you think he will in the Windy City?
Well, it's tough. See, the thing with Jacksonville versus Chicago, right? It always comes down to the division. Jacksonville really has 5 winnable games, right? They got the home game against Houston, which is winnable because you're at home. Yeah. And then they got the road games at Tennessee, and at Indianapolis, and you could win home or on the road. So you got 5 games that you could really win. Chicago, though, man, are 1 or 2? I don't think they're going to have as much success as they're hoping for in Chicago. I got to see it to believe with Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I do as well. I think Ben Johnson could be the guy, but as every Bears fan will tell you, in the last 3 decades, good things lose their luster a little bit in that Bears organization. We'll talk about the worst hires of this cycle up next.
There's smart and there's not smart. Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Keep it here and win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
1982, Wayne Gretzky scores his 153rd point of the season, breaking the NHL record.
Gretzky backhands in front, score! Gretzky's got the record! As he sets up the goal, it's a power play goal!
The Great One finished the 81-82 season with 212 points, and a record that still stands today, 92 goals. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Full self-driving cars are still not reality, but most modern vehicles now offer some kind of driving assistance like lane keeping or automatic braking. New North Carolina State research tests 3 ways to get a distracted human driver to take control. Number 1, warning bells. 2, spoken instructions.
Please avoid the bridge abutment.
And number 3, a more conversational approach.
Tell me, what did you eat for lunch? By the way, that's a bus.
And the winner, conversation.
I'm not sure where we're going, but I'm sure we'll get there eventually.
Follow me at Capalbo on X and stay tuned to The Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Moneyline.
But all 15 absolutely rattled. Worrying about wearing midnight green into the game was a bit of a mistake. He was trying to create all this other stuff and energy and legacy and boogeyman and yada. He looked like Sam Darnold in the Super Bowl.
Catch Moneyline with Donnie Rightside and Kevin Walsh. Weekdays, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific. On the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go, there you are. Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you.
So now you can get the winning edge
anywhere. Even while the wife's talking to you.
if you've got an earbud.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC with the Saints' official hire of Kellen Moore yesterday. The 7 head coaching vacancies around the NFL this offseason have all been filled. So, although it took a while to get that 7th and final one as the Saints waited for the Eagles season to come to a close as a Super Bowl champ before hiring Kellen Moore, Scott, we can finally look back as a whole one last time on the best and worst coaching hires and situations that these new head coaches will find. What do you think was the worst hire of this 2025 head coaching carousel?
I have two. I'll start with Pete Carroll in Las Vegas. Not because Pete's a bad head coach, but it just doesn't make any sense to me, Ben. He's going to be 74 the first month of the football season. 74. Now, if he was taking over San Francisco, Green Bay, pick any team that you think is a win-now team, okay, I get it. I'll buy in. But he's not. He's at the other end of the spectrum. I mean, completely. I mean, Las Vegas, forget about the fact that the team itself is bad, but the division that they're in is great.
Yeah.
And now you're bringing in a head coach. You don't have a quarterback. You don't have a wide receiver. You don't have a running back. You don't have a high draft choice to seemingly go get your quarterback at this point. I mean, you're looking at a 2, 3 year, 4 year project with the Las Vegas Raiders, and you're bringing in a 74-year-old guy. I don't. What am I missing here? Go get yourself a young guy. Admit to the world, okay, we have to completely rebuild and somehow or another bring someone in here, quarterback-wise, that's going to lead us to the promised land. But I just don't see Pete Carroll. I know why Pete would do it because, listen, beggars can't be choosers. At 73, 74, you take any job that's offered to you, right? But I just don't understand why the Raiders would do that. And then the other one, to me, most people might not agree with this, but I don't see the Aaron Glenn thing with the New York Jets. I just don't. I asked myself, if he wasn't a former New York Jet, would he have gotten that job? Maybe, maybe not. They got the hot prospect last time with Robert Saleh. How'd that work out? They went with Adam Gase before that. How did that work out? I don't know who would be good, but all I do know is, bring in young coordinators. Everything is new. There's no leadership to me. The owner is in flux. The GM is the new GM. The head coach is new. The coordinator's new. I just see this disaster written all over it. I really do.
Scott, for me, I think one of the optimistic trends, or at least a turn for New York already this offseason, was the new brass coming together, new general manager Darren Muge, and new head coach Aaron Glenn, in saying, Aaron Rodgers, you are not our future at the quarterback position. They were asked about it almost exclusively at Glenn's introductory press conference when he was named the Jets' new head coach. They kind of danced around it a little bit, saying our team is more than just the quarterback. Obviously, it's important. But I think for them to send that statement, we're not hanging on to you, pal, because we're paying you. We're not hanging on to you to hopefully get back to a version that we saw in 2021 in Green Bay. This is our move. Here is what we are doing. To me, that shows a little bit of accountability. And I do believe Aaron Glenn, based on everything he has said and what we have heard from players that have been coached by Glenn, not just defensively, but his ability to inspire, I hope he can have some success. The Jets, as a franchise and organization, I am never all that confident by. It's hard to be, Scott, when they haven't made the postseason for 14 consecutive years, with the longest active drought in the National Football League by far. In half of those 14 seasons, like we saw in 2024, they have finished with 5 wins or fewer. And it wasn't a Jets team where you were hoping for Aaron Rodgers to respond from the Achilles injury and maybe get to 6 wins. Got their win total, as we discussed at length, was 9.5. The juice on the over, expected to be a double-digit win team. They greatly failed on that expectation. Scott, your point about Las Vegas, though, I think is incredibly sound. I think Pete Carroll is an incredibly successful head coach, both at the collegiate and NFL level. You can't argue that. I think Kellen Moore is a very bright offensive mind in New Orleans. I think they inherit the 2 worst situations on paper that you can find. The Saints in cap hell once again, minus 54 in terms of millions of dollars. Negative $54 million in terms of their cap space. Deep into the red. And there's a lot of issues New Orleans has to figure out, namely the quarterback position, to even allow the offensive genius that Kellen Moore is supposed to be to have some success. But Vegas is the one that kind of leaves me scratching my head. What exactly is the plan in place, Scott, as you alluded to? We'll talk Pete Carroll and the Raiders. And then, of course, we got to talk Brian Schottenheimer and the Dallas Cowboys on the other side of the break as well. All of that upcoming here on FFC on SportsGrid Radio.
The Winning Edge. You've got it. But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us. But we're working on that. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders. Kevin Durant's become the 8th player to reach the NBA's 30,000-point milestone. He reached the mark on third-quarter free throws against the Grizzlies on Tuesday night. He joins the likes of Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and longtime foe LeBron James on the list. Among active players, Durant sits second behind James and just over 3,000 points ahead of Clippers guard James Harden. The Suns came up short, losing 119-112 against the Grizzlies. The Raptors and newly acquired wing Brandon Ingram have agreed to a 3-year, $120 million contract extension that includes a player option in the 27-28 season. The Saints have hired Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore as their new head coach. Former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley is the leading candidate to become the Saints defensive coordinator. Moore was Staley's offensive coordinator with the Chargers. Bundle auto and home, renters, or condo and save with Progressive.
That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
One of life's greatest mysteries has finally been solved.
Who let the dogs out? Spruce.
It's Spruce, the new hard-working, worry-free weed and grass killer that's safe for use around people and pets. When used as directed, spray the leaves for visible results in just 1 hour and dead weeds in just 1 day. You spray, they play. Weeds die by the next day. Find Spruce wherever weed killers are sold.
With Progressive's Name Your Price tool, you get coverage options based on how much you want to pay for car insurance. And then you decide how to spend the rest of your money, because you're in charge. And right now, you're going to pay for groceries. But you decide what groceries. Just keep in mind you're running out of dishwashing soap. But you decide if you're going to buy that soap. Just those dishes won't clean themselves, will they? Remember, with Progressive's Name Your Price tool, we'll help you find coverage at a fair price. And then you're in charge. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Not available in all states. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
You're listening to SportsGrid, spreading the winning edge far and wide. Terrestrial, internet, TV, satellite, and don't forget our mobile app. Face it, the winning edge is everywhere. Somewhere there's a squirrel frustrated he can't get a phone. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. Some of the worst coaching hires in worst situations of the 7 that we have seen around this NFL head coaching carousel that is now officially complete in the 2025 NFL offseason. Scott, we're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. Pete Carroll is a highly successful Super Bowl champion, national championship winning coach at the collegiate level. There is very little you can argue against that. After a year off from the NFL, he is back now in Las Vegas. 73 years old, as you alluded to, will turn 74 in the opening month of the 2025 NFL season in September. And Scott, I've talked about this when it happened. Kind of came out of the blue that Pete Carroll was a front runner for the Raiders head coaching job and then was named the head coach. Talked about it today with Donnie on the early line as well. Donnie has made the point, and it's not just to talk about what we speak about on the early line, but Donnie has made the point that Pete Carroll, with all of his pedigree and all of his experience in the National Football League and collegiately, now at 73, takes that veteran experience and for a Raiders team that has been chaotic in the last 2 decades, try to put them on some stable ground, which I can kind of get behind and understand if Pete Carroll was actually back in college, because you can instill a culture and you can have heir apparents and you can name a successor even in a current contract while still working before you fade off into the sunset. Scott, when you go coach to coach, regime to regime in the NFL, it is often the complete opposite. You completely overhaul everything. You try to instill a new culture, a new confidence level. So the idea that Pete Carroll is kind of coming in to calm the waters in Las Vegas, and that's his role, not to lead the Raiders to the playoffs in the highly difficult AFC West or even get to 8-9 wins. I don't really see that aspect of it, and I don't really see him really calming the waters, even if he brings that professional, successful standard that he has largely seen in the last 15 years in Seattle.
Yeah. And that's what John Gruden was supposed to do. Right now, I know the issues off the field, cost him his job, but ultimately, they lived that purgatory with Derek Carr year after year after year. Now they're going underneath that, and they want to get back to that level. But once you get to that level, you want to take the next step. And at that point, he's going to be 76, 77. I mean, and we all say it in all sports, football included. The last thing you want to do is be in purgatory, right? You don't want to be 9-8. You don't want to be, that mediocre team like the Raiders seemingly are striving for. You want to be dead last. This way, you can bounce back in a couple of years, get yourself a big time quarterback, and then maybe turn the franchise around. I'm sure the Vegas people did not expect this kind of, Raiders team. I don't get it. I tell you, Pete would have been great for Chicago. I think he would have been really good. If we were going to do a mix and match, man, I would have said the Dallas Cowboys. That's the type of team, a win-now team, bring a proven leader in there, guy that the players would respect, maybe even Jacksonville, I think he's a very good head coach, and I can't see them failing. I can't see a Pete Carroll team going 4-13, but it just might with the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, there's not a whole heck of a lot there. Unless, Ben, they made these promises like, okay, we're going to go get Sam Darnold. We're going to go make some moves. We're going to trade draft choices. We're going to get into the top 2-3 picks. I was hearing reports yesterday about how Tennessee supposedly is looking to trade out of the number one spot, which makes absolutely no sense to me. But maybe they can pull off a miracle like that and just turn the franchise around. And now you got Pete Carroll leading them, but again, is he going to lead them to 500? And then what? You're going to get rid of him, or he's going to step down? You're going to start the whole process all over again because you have a head coach who's 77? Right. I don't know. Doesn't make sense to me.
And there's not a lot of pieces in place, Scott, for Las Vegas. A lot they have to figure out on both sides of the football. Their face of the franchise the last 2-3 years, Max Crosby, one of the best defensive linemen in the sport, was talking on Radio Row how he wants to win. He doesn't want a rebuild. Does that lead to a trade discussion? Does that lead to a parting of ways? A long offseason ahead in Las Vegas. New GM as well in John Spytek, who is Tom Brady's former college teammate and, of course, buddies together with the Buccaneers. And Tom Brady now a minority owner in terms of the Las Vegas Raiders. And Scott, what you mentioned there in terms of the draft capital is going to be interesting. Could the Titans be like, hey, Shedeur Sanders wants to play in Las Vegas. Dion's cool with the black and silver. You want us to give you this pick? All right, we're going to need 4 first-rounders. But you can get Shedeur Sanders. Do the Raiders look to go that route? Trade up to be in a position to select their quarterback of the future? Do they attack it through free agency in a limited market? Do they try to make a blockbuster deal? What does all of this look like? I think that's a huge component of it. It's got 190-1 for the Raiders to win next year's Super Bowl. Third longest price. Only the Titans at 200-1 and the Giants at 210-1 have longer numbers than Las Vegas right now. Ton of cap space, though, at Spytek's disposal, $92 million. That will be the interesting part, Scott, to see if the Raiders make their way up the draft board. Currently, they hold the 6th overall selection. The Raiders won 2 of their final 3 games, week 16 against the Jags, week 17 on the road in New Orleans. Now, unlike a couple of teams, a.k.a. the Giants, that squandered the opportunity to draft 1st overall, I guess if we want to give them a little bit of credit, Scott, for the Raiders, they were at least slight favorites in those games, ever so slight favorites against also bad teams.
Yeah, I don't understand these teams, man. I don't get, what are those organizations in their front office saying to themselves right now, especially the Giants, because the head coach and the GM are both back. I mean, man, we're sitting here at number 3. We could have been 1. Just lose to the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, what do you not know that going? I mean, it's just amazing how the NFL's been able to sell it, man. I'll give the NFL credit. That was the NBA. We're going to see it in another month or 2, right? These NBA teams, we saw with the Chicago Bulls, they're all going to be losing on purpose. NFL, man, they try and win. It's amazing. If you believe in yourself, then, as a GM and as a talent evaluator, would I give up 4 number 1s for Sanders or Ward? Yeah, if I'm confident in my ability to rate talent, and I think Cam Ward or Sanders, either one of the two, is going to be a lifelong quarterback, then it's worth 4 number ones if that's what it takes to be number one. Because you turn your whole franchise around. You could draft the best wide receiver, the best offensive tackle, whoever it may be at number 6, but it doesn't turn your franchise around. Whereas to me, you go get the quarterback if you believe in him, you invest in him, and you'll work out all the other details with your number 2 or 3 or 4th round picks or free agency. Free agency is a lot easier to get players nowadays than it used to be. So, but it's tough to get a big time quarterback in free agency. I would do it if I thought those guys really were, worthy of it.
And maybe the Titans would be willing to listen to offers, as we have already received those reports, because they don't believe their quarterback or face of the franchise is there at the number 1 spot. It's not exactly last year's quarterback draft class, Scott, with 6 quarterbacks going in the first round, most in the modern draft era back to 1997, all 6 going in the top 12. We might see 2. We might see at most 3 go in the opening round this year, and I'm not so sure there's that bona fide number 1 as we have seen the last few seasons. We have got those reports that new Titans GM Mike Borgonzi is willing to listen to some trade offers for that first overall pick. It is, of course, smokescreen season, draft season, what is true, what is fake, so on and so forth. Scott, we have talked about Brian Schottenheimer, the new head coach in Dallas. Dak Prescott yesterday at a foundation in Dallas for the Children's Cancer Fund, of course, when he was available, was hounded by reporters and was asked about the new head coach for the Cowboys and Brian Schottenheimer, a guy that Dak has known well over the past few seasons, and where the Cowboys stand entering 2025. Because it is always a Super Bowl that Dallas will be evaluated by. Are the Cowboys close? We'll hear what Dak had to say up next.
We're not saying every SportsGrid listener is a legend, but you might start thinking about who's going to play you in the movie. Just saying. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
15 measles cases, mostly in school-aged children, have been confirmed in a small county in West Texas with one of the highest rates of vaccine exemptions in the state.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg.
South Plains Public Health District Director Zach Holbrook said Monday that his department was first notified in late January about the first 2 cases in Gaines County, which he said were 2 children who had seen a physician in Lubbock. Some of the cases appear to be connected to private religious schools in the district. Holbrook says an investigation is ongoing. New York government employees are barred from downloading DeepSeek's artificial intelligence application onto state devices due to security concerns. Governor Kathy Hochul made the announcement Monday. The DeepSeek chatbot known as R1 responds to user queries just like its U.S.-based counterparts, such as the popular ChatGPT. But the China-based DeepSeek has code hidden in its programming that has the built-in capability to send user data directly to the Chinese government, according to experts.
I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
If you love designer brands and you love clearance, then you're going to love this. Macy's is having a huge designer clearance event right now with incredible new designer markdowns on cold weather styles from BCBG, Hugo Boss, Michael Kors, and more. How big are the markdowns? How about Coach boots for $200 or less? So if you're looking for the things you love all in one place, come in and shop the designer clearance event at Macy's today. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
With Progressive's Name Your Price tool, you get coverage options based on how much you want to pay for car insurance. And then you decide how to spend the rest of your money, because you're in charge. And right now, you're going to pay for groceries. But you decide what groceries. Just keep in mind you're running out of dishwashing soap. But you decide if you're going to buy that soap. Just those dishes won't clean themselves, will they? Remember, with Progressive's Name Your Price tool, we'll help you find coverage at a fair price. And then you're in charge. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Not available in all states. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important. That's where we come in. SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week. The winning edge. It's your advantage to more winning more often. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. So, Scott, as the head coaching carousel has come to a close, in the 7 franchises that made a head coaching hire early in the 2025 NFL offseason, I think a lot of people would point to the Dallas Cowboys and say, what the heck are you guys doing with hiring Brian Schottenheimer? And for me, that's not a reflection of Brian Schottenheimer, who has worked as an assistant for the better part of 2.5 decades in the NFL, an offensive coordinator for nearly a decade and a half among various franchises in the National Football League. It's how Jerry Jones has constructed continuously his organization. But don't take our word for it. Dak Prescott last night in Dallas, speaking ahead of this year's Children's Cancer Fund Gala that will be held on April 11th, was doing some media availability and, of course, was asked plenty of football questions. Asked about his new head coach, Brian Schottenheimer, said, quote, super excited for him, this opportunity. Obviously, I've worked with him the last couple of years, understanding the type of man he is, the way that he approaches the game. I think the best way to exemplify that is he is the son of a legendary coach, referring to Marty Schottenheimer, Brian's father. He's not going to take anything about this game lightly. He enjoys the work in it, kind of old-fashioned. Scott, he was asked further about watching his 2 divisional foes, the Commanders and the Eagles, battle in the NFC Championship game, and then seeing Philadelphia, of course, go home with the ultimate prize, that Lombardi trophy. Dak had this to say. As I said, I feel confident that we've gotten the better part each and every time. But just seeing such a dominating fashion, referring to Super Bowl 59 for Philadelphia, credit to them. It's our turn, and it's on us. End quote from Dak Prescott. Now, many people took that to mean that Dak was saying, the Cowboys are right there. They are close to finally playing in a conference championship game and contending for a Lombardi trophy. Scott, what say you?
Yeah, I don't know about that. You also went on to say, how they held their own against the Philadelphia Eagles. So since they were close to Philadelphia head-to-head, they should be close to Philadelphia success-wise. It doesn't always work that way, Dak. Not to mention you're 2-4 against Philadelphia in the last 6 meetings. But I listen, I'm the extreme. I'm on the outside, I think. I like the Schottenheimer hire. I really do. I mean, you look at the 6 other guys that got hired, right? I do think Pete Carroll would have been a good fit there. I really do. But they weren't getting Ben Johnson. He really wanted to go to Chicago for whatever reason. They weren't getting Mike Vrabel. That's a natural fit with the New England Patriots. They weren't getting Aaron Glenn. That was a natural fit with the New York Jets. They ran Kellen Moore out of town, so they clearly didn't want him at all. So, who's left? Liam Cohen? All right, but to work with Dak. But, the issue with Dak hasn't been regular season. The issue with Dak has been postseason, and the team in general has been postseason. Yeah. So they bring in a guy that's worked with Dak, that's had success with Dak. That's a lifelong football guy. His father, he's been in the NFL since he came out of his mother's, body. I mean, I don't know what they, what do they want? Why? I just don't. I've said this before, Ben. I don't understand why Kellen Moore is considered the offensive genius. Now he's got a Super Bowl now, but he was regarded that way before. This year's Super Bowl. What separates Kellen Moore from Brian Schottenheimer? They were both with Dallas. They both failed in the postseason. They both had success with Dak. What makes Kellen Moore so great and Brian Schottenheimer the bum? And if you want to tell me, well, he's going to be a puppet for for Jerry Jones. Yeah. I mean, Jerry Jones has had the team for 30 plus years. Every single quarter, every single head coach has been a puppet for him. So why should this next hire be any different? You act surprised. I mean, you, Ben, but the public acts surprised. Like, oh my God, it's another puppet. Yeah. You have to know that going in. So if you know that going in, that he's going to hire some guy that he's going to be comfortable with, well, then why not the offensive coordinator of your team? So I like the hire. I think they're going to have success. I don't think about winning a Super Bowl. They got to make some moves. They got to get some help, clearly on the offensive line and the backfield and everything. But I like the move, and I think they'll be good this year.
Scott, Kellen Moore would have been a puppet for Jerry Jones. Basically, everybody in this coaching cycle, not named Bill Belichick or perhaps Pete Carroll, would have acted as a puppet for Jerry Jones. It is the way that Jerry has constructed this Cowboys organization, where I personally believe his ego, his aura, his own personal reputation outweighs team success, which is an interesting thing for the guy that built the brand of America's team, highlighted by Lombardi trophies in the 80s and 90s. The last Super Bowl championship for Dallas in 1995. Scott, I do think the difference, though, between Brian Schottenheimer and Kellen Moore in terms of their success as an offensive play caller, despite Schottenheimer being the OC the last 2 years in Dallas, Mike McCarthy was calling the plays. When Kellen Moore was the offensive play caller for 4 seasons, 2019 through 2022, 3 of the 4 years, Dallas had a top 10 offense in both scoring and yardage put up per game. His last 2 years, 2021-22, top 5 scoring offense for the Cowboys each of those 2 seasons. Brian Schottenheimer, though, does have pedigree beyond what he has done in Dallas. He has been doing it for 2.5 decades, 24 seasons as an assistant coach in the NFL. And Scott, like you, I don't think it's a knock on Brian Schottenheimer on why I feel that this was one of the weirdest decisions of the coaching cycle. It's because of Jerry Jones. And then we saw that in the press conference that was supposed to introduce Brian Schottenheimer and explain Jones's rationale when he basically said, I'm taking a huge risk on this guy who is not proven. So slandering the guy that he hired for not, it was just truly insane in all of that. Now, as for Dak's comments of it's our turn, it's on us, God, that's been the story for the Cowboys since 1995. Now, 30 years ago in the National Football League, 30 NFL seasons since the Dallas Cowboys last won a Lombardi trophy, and they have failed to even get to the NFC Championship game. So that is the standard. If Brian Schottenheimer leads Dallas to a 9-8 or 10-7 record in his rookie year as the head coach, kudos, great. But Dallas has done that. That is the building block of what you would hope for success. And Scott, I really do believe in 2025, there's a great chance the Cowboys have to make it to the postseason.
Oh, yeah, I think so as well. Now, I might get a little of a pass because of what happened this past season, with them not doing very well. But, yeah, it's postseason or bust, at least year number 1, and then Super Bowl or bust year number 2 and on.
No doubt about it. We'll continue the Cowboys conversation and a little bit of what Travis Kelce had to say about his football future up next.
Luck is winning the lottery. Strategy is settling your divorce before cashing in the ticket.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Money Line at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7.
Get the winning edge.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Dallas Cowboys because they have been branded for many a season as America's team, are judged by the best thing you can do in the sport of football in America. Win a Super Bowl championship. Scott, their last Lombardi, as we have shared countless times, in 1995. They have failed to reach the NFC Championship game in any of their 13 playoff appearances since that season. Now going on 3 decades without a conference championship appearance, of course, let alone a Super Bowl berth as well. And Scott, they are the only team in the NFC now out of 16 after the Commanders reached that stage this season with a first-year head coach in that organization and a rookie quarterback that has not reached the NFC Championship game since at least the year 2010. And the Cowboys go back 15 seasons prior to that. It's crazy to think of teams like the Panthers and the Falcons and the Bears even have been in the NFC Championship game since 2010 and beyond. The Cardinals have certainly reached that stage. But really, it's just the Cowboys, Scott, at this point. And they have to hope that changes as soon as possible. Now with Brian Schottenheimer at the helm.
Yeah, I mean, even Arizona, you start to think about some of these teams that have just been bad for so long or mediocre, and yet they've been there, and somehow or another Dallas hasn't. And what makes it even worse is, like, Dallas has been actually halfway decent, right? It's not like they've just bottomed out for the last 30 years, that they've been competitive for the most part every single season and haven't gotten there. You know, and I'm going to correct myself or change my thinking, Ben, with Dallas and Schottenheimer. You know, if they have a successful season and if they get to the playoffs and everyone's talking about how good Dallas is and it's different now, and then they were to lose, you know, God forbid, in the first round, you know, maybe he wouldn't get a pass. I'm thinking originally I said, yeah, he'd probably get a pass first year, you know, back to the postseason after this past year. But, you know, if you really fast forward and if you really go through the regular season next year, and they go 11-6, and people are talking about how good they are, and Dak's no doubt going to have a good year. If they were to lose again in the first round, it would be same old story. So, yeah, he probably doesn't have a year's pass. He really doesn't.
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting spot, Scott. As we said last year, Mike McCarthy on the warmest seat maybe ever without a contract beyond 2024. Turned out that was correct. I do think Schottenheimer will get to see a few years. It's not Jerry Jones' style to dismiss a head coach after only a year or two, but we'll see how successful that tenure can be in Dallas. Scott, at the end of a season, of course, for veterans around the league, they take time to reflect on what their career has been and what they wanted to be moving forward. Travis Kelce was asked about potential retirement in the build-up to Super Bowl 59, basically said, not worried about it. I still think I have plenty of football playing days ahead of me. But that's what you say when you're in the hunt for history and 3 consecutive Lombardi trophies and expecting to win that game to be in the hunt for more history and 4 consecutive Super Bowl championships. When you come up short, it is a fleeting feeling. And here's what Travis Kelce had to say on his New Heights podcast, of course, that he hosts with his brother, Jason Kelce. I know everybody wants to know whether I'm playing next year, and right now, I'm just kicking everything down the road. I'm kicking every can I can down the road. I'm not making any crazy decisions. End quote. Scott, do you ultimately believe Travis Kelce will return for year number 13 of his NFL career in Kansas City in 2025?
I think so. I think so. You know, because like you said, you know, all beforehand, it was all, yeah, I'm coming back. And then you lose and you get your butt kicked like that. And then maybe it does make you reevaluate things. But ultimately, I think he wants the limelight for at least one more year. He doesn't have a monster contract. I looked it up. I forget what it was, but it's about $15 million or so. It's not a lot. And he could clearly make that seemingly now outside of football with all his podcasts and everything else going on. You want to strike while the iron's hot. Will that publicity die a little bit if they have a bad year next year? You know, I'm assuming as long as he's with Travis Kelce, as long as he's with Taylor Swift, you know, that's not going to go away. But I think he's going to hold on, you know, at least one more year. I do.
It's part of all of those extracurricular things, Scott, that Travis Kelce has going on in his life that you would think even now might be the time to walk away if he feels he even still has football playing days ahead. He is 35 years old. He has spent all 12 of his NFL seasons in KC. The last 10, he's been a Pro Bowler, even with some of the decline in production, but from a very high standard that he set throughout his career. Still Mahomes' top target in the regular season, 133. Nobody else in KC had more than 100. He's Scott Wetzel. I'm Ben Stevens. We'll see you on Football Full Circle tomorrow, noon Eastern time on SportsGrid Radio.
Now you've done it.
You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.